Cloud. Thank you, Amy. So I'm going to just read you something that my very brilliant research assistant, Izzy, wrote, because I said, I've been talking about post-human infrastructure, but can you make it sound clear about what is that? Like what I will say for me, I don't know Chinese, but in the little bit that I've studied Chinese, I've been really captivated by the way words are often comprised of concepts that get put together. So this idea of post-human infrastructure is one of those kinds of concepts of post-humanism and infrastructure being put together to create something different. So I'm going to read you what Izzy wrote. Izzy wrote. Post-human infrastructure. Post-human is a concept that critiques anthropocentrism and the philosophical branch of humanism, a dominant ethos that has shaped social relations and the way humans relate to the non-human world for centuries. There's a rich discourse on post-human and post-humanism. Therefore, there are many ways one might define these concepts. In my understanding, post-humanism pushes back against the centering of the human, moving toward a thinking that eradicates hierarchy of being and challenge the life, non-life binary. Post-humanism is an ontological pursuit of what it means to be human, what it means to be non-human, and where these categories rupture and collide. Infrastructure is a word that has been used in French since 1875 and in English since 1887, originally meaning the installations that form the basis for any operation or system. Infrastructure breaks down into two units, infra and structure. Infra is a Latin word forming element meaning below or underneath, or the underside, beneath. But modern popular use of it dates from the 1920s as an opposite to super, often in science fiction. Structure is typically defined as an action or process of building or construction. Our contemporary definition of structure can be traced from structus, past participle of struere, to pile, place together, heap up, build, assemble, arrange, make by joining together. This is derived from stere, the Proto-Indo-European root meaning to spread. When we hear infrastructure, we don't necessarily hear assemblages that lie below or something that has been joined together underneath. When we hear infrastructure, we might see the Pentagon, see a prison, hear the train, or see a highway. Maybe we think about the infrastructure of this class using satellites to connect us. With its dissection, we see how infrastructure is all of those things, as those are the dominant system of human organization. But when we couple post-humanism with the term infrastructure, we begin to think about organizations that extend beyond the human. In decentering the human from our understanding and building infrastructure, we debuild the human world and nurture worlds already made by other critters that live amongst us. Post-human infrastructure thinks about the life and non-life of structures. It allows us to deconstruct our own selves in relation to the more than human through the building of world. So I thought it would be best to just jump right in to reading and talking about the wealth of ideas that are part of this idea of building a culture that supports the web of life. So um, we've chosen collectively at Metabolic Studio 7 readings for 7 weeks. And in each of those readings, you'll meet one of Metabolic Studio's team of protagonists that are engaging with a pretty difficult to cultivate uh, a series of post-industrial sites on either side of the LA River. The number 7 is kind of special because there's 7 readings, 7 guests that you'll meet, but all of them have been working for 7 years on 2 different sites. One site used to be Standard Oil. Sorry. The post-human infrastructure hasn't quite happened. I'm talking from the train line. And the other is a tow yard on the other side of the LA River that was famous because back in the 90s, all of us who used to go punk rock dancing in East LA would always get our car towed there. So almost everybody I know in my generation remembers that from going to get your car late at night after a night of wild dancing. It was also made famous by O.J. Simpson's, after he was caught by the police, that's where his Bronco was towed. So it's a kind of Repo Man post-apocalyptic site. And over the last 7 years, Farm Lab at Metabolic Studio that conducts these probes, these inquiries, these research-based practices, and how do we make the floodplain that's buried underneath that tarmac and parking lot, or how do we get to the floodplain that's buried beneath 10 feet of landfill from different construction sites to rebound? And what do we do with the debris that you need to alter in order to allow a floodplain to be a floodplain again? So we've chosen readings and wanted to introduce you to a number of these ideas about earth repair, starting this week with the very concept of earth repair. And to then think about what we as a cohort during these 7 weeks can do together as part of this class. I wanted to also open this class up to begin to introduce ourselves, not just from where we're calling in from, but where is our ancestral home? What are the elements in our DNA that we're responding to when we think about decolonizing geographies? Where do we come from? Where do we feel connected to? What in our DNA's narrative can we bring to the table to enliven and uplift the web of life where we are today? So in terms of the structure of today, I wanted to popcorn around the room now and just have you introduce yourselves and where you're calling in from. And then we'll go right into a small amount of reading that Milli has chosen for us from Earth Repair, followed by a short break, a little bit of discussions around the guiding questions that we have around earth repair. And then we'll go into breakout groups to introduce each other to each other in terms of the question of where are we all from and how does that inform this idea of earth repair and who we are in that narrative tradition. So I'll just popcorn it to Casey, and maybe you can unmute yourself and tell us where you're calling in from and whatever you'd like to say, and then popcorn it to someone else.
Great. Nice to meet everyone. My name's Casey. I'm calling from Los Angeles. I am here for multiple reasons. I am a landscape architect and artist, so this is well within my wheelhouse and interest in terms of practice and repair and sculptural practice. I'm quasi new to California, so I would say that my roots are definitely predominantly from Pennsylvania, middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, but industrial railroad heritage. Yeah, I guess that's good enough to start. Stacy? I bumped Stacy.
Hi, I'm Stacy. I'm near Occidental, California, and I spend most of my time in Oakland, California. And I've been in California for about 30 years. And I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. And my ancestral is largely West African based on my DNA research. Burkina Faso, Ghana, Nigeria. Oh, I'm just like someone. Grace.
Hi everyone, I am on Amiskwichi Waskagan, which is Nehiwa for Beaver Hills. It's on grassland near the Rocky Mountains, also known as Canada, Edmonton, Alberta, right near where the oil industry is. My parents immigrated here in early 80s. On my father's side, he is from Guangzhou, southern China, and was a refugee to Hong Kong, and met my mom in Hong Kong, and they came here. So that's who I am and where my family is from. And I will ask Epiphany to popcorn to Epiphany.
Thank you, Grace. I'm Epiphany and I'm located in Portland, Oregon. I'm originally from Tacoma, Washington. Feel very, very connected to the land there. My family is Native American. We're Puyallup and Yakima. And so I grew up very closely connected to the Puyallup tribe, which is in Tacoma. So on my father's side, we are also very Norwegian, very Scandinavian, and both of those very much affect me and my life and my work. So yeah, very blended like many people. Millie.
Hi, everyone. I am zooming in from Tongaland, also known as Los Angeles. I also am very near to the LA River and get to enjoy the flyby of all these beautiful migrating birds early morning. My ancestry is Mixteca from Mexico, and I feel very connected to that land, but also to California overall. My husband is from Oakland, so Stacy, awesome, you're from Oakland as well. I spend a lot of time in Owens Valley, so I'm very, very close to that land as well. And most of my time, I do live here in Los Angeles. And again, I feel very close to the land here. I also am a caretaker of the land. I'm a grower of vegetables, grower of plants, medicine. I'm a grower of community and teams. and very honored to be part of the Metabolic Studio team and to be to just have a relationship with interdisciplinary artists at Metabolic Studio is on a daily basis uplifting. So thanks, Lauren, for all your visions. I'm gonna popcorn it to Mauru.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. And yeah, I'm so happy to be here, seeing, of course, people from Metabolic and just like this group of very interesting people that I'm looking forward to meet. My name is Maru Garcia. I'm originally from Mexico, born and raised there. I can say that I'm from the city is called Puebla, but I'm from like the area that is like very close to two beautiful volcanoes and mountains. And yeah, it's always good to remember home. I lived there and then I moved to the north of Mexico, which is very different, very dry and very hot. And then Guadalajara before coming here. So I've been like already migrating a little bit. And I feel, well, I'm right now calling from Los Angeles. I'm currently living here. And yeah, I feel that this question of connecting to the land is something that I'm always questioning myself as I'm going this journey. And yeah, as I'm saying, I'm very grateful to be here. And yeah, looking forward to meet you. I'll popcorn to Sarah.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sarah. So I'm here splitting my time between the homelands of the Kumeyaay and Kahia people, or San Diego and the Salton Sea. So in Southern California. I grew up in a family that moved constantly. So I always have kind of a struggle around the issue of home. We never lived very far from an ocean. So I think I grew up by the sea, and that still often feels like the place that I can call home, wherever that is. And I'm trying to see who hasn't already spoken. Maybe Daniel, can I popcorn to you?
Hi, my name is Daniel DeLuca. I'm calling in from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. But I've spent most of my adult life I just moved down here. I have spent most of my adult life in the Boston area and grew up in Western Massachusetts. On my mother's side, her parents come from Germany and Lithuania. And on my father's side, all from Italy and Sicily and Naples. I'm an interdisciplinary artist interested in artificial intelligence research and blockchain technology. I'm interested in technology at large. So I'm interested to see and think through the sort of technical features of some of these remediation practices that are going on in this work. And it's great to meet you all. I'll throw it over to Alexandra.
Hello, can you hear me? Oh, cannot hear you anymore for whatever reason, but my name is Alex. You can call me Alex. I'm currently in Providence, Rhode Island. I moved here 3 years ago to attend RISD, but I'm originally from Bucharest, Romania, where I moved 10 years ago. I'm a first generation student. And yeah, I'm very, very happy to be here. I'm grateful for this opportunity. Can't wait to learn. I'm going to pass it to Mary Rose.
Thank you so much. And I'm here as just a joyful support. I've been helping with the flow of this course closely with Lauren and Millie. And I'm originally from an area in Chicago called Brookfield. and a lot of creeks, Salt Creek. And my family I trace back to Romania and Hungary. And so again, you're a very big body of water called the Somme River. So I think that's really beautiful that you picked me, Alex, because we're connected in that way. And I'm excited to just learn and watch the process of this course. Thank you. And I would love to hear from Vineta Rose.
Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be taking this course. I'm taking it in Los Angeles. I was born and raised in LA. I went to college here, I went to university here, and I've kind of lived in all its different pockets. I've lived in like the beach communities and in the inner city and more east and more north. So I'm interested to learn more about how to connect with the land and how to speak for the land and its biology and what that looks like, and how to greater connect to this great city and other spaces, and how we as humans can learn how to speak for these spaces. So I'm super excited to be taking this class, and it's nice to meet everyone. I will call on Jess.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Jess, and I am currently in unceded Ohlone territory in San Francisco, California. I also spend a lot of time just north of here in a small beach town called Bolinas, which is Coast Miwok land. And I'm just thrilled to be here. I am currently working at a tech company and feeling increasingly distanced from nature and the land, especially in this world of Zoom meetings all day long. And really intrigued by the concept of urban rewilding in particular. Lauren, I see the book behind you, Ministry for the Future, which I just finished, and just really excited to delve into this with all of you and world build together. So thank you. I'll pass it over to Amy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amy, calling in from Narragansett and Wampanoag land, otherwise known as Providence, Rhode Island, and have spent most of my life in what is called New England, and feel very connected to the ocean here and the landscape here. And I'm kind of engineering a life change to focus much more of my attention on climate work and environmental justice work and regeneration work as an artist. So that's taking some doing, but this class is definitely putting some inspiring fire under my butt. And my heritage and ancestry is Irish. I'm second generation. My grandparents came over here basically as refugees. And my whole extended family is still in the Boston area. So I feel very much assimilated into being a white US settler. And I also have a lot of threads of connection to that heritage, especially in terms of relationship to land somehow. So thank you. And I will pass it to Nikki.
Thank you, Amy. Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with you. I hear Jess on the Zoom meetings. I get it, but I've been in a car for 4 days straight, traveling across the country. So I could not be happier to see a rigid grid and stillness right now. It feels really nice, actually. It feels soothing. So I'm a little not quite here in the place that I'm in right now. My body's traveling time zones and things. But I did look up that I'm calling in from Jumanos, and I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, in Mescalero Apache and Lipan Apache. I'm in Marfa, Texas right now from Rhode Island. In Rhode Island, I live in Narragansett and Wampanoag, like Amy, and I work in Pokanoket land in Rhode Island, surrounding the Narragansett Bay. I did have a chance to write in the car, and I knew I would be tired when I got to this meeting, so I'll just read two short lines, but I'm from the ocean beds of the Austrian Alps, the currents of the Hudson River, the tides of the Long Island Sound and the Narragansett Bay. And I am of genetic material and vibration from Yakutia in Siberia. So my Providence sisters, Alex and Amy, which is a lovely little pod to know now. And I pass popcorn to Megan.
Hi, even though I was born in Virginia, I have to say, I have no memory of it. We moved to New England area at the age of 3, and that's really where I think I have my strongest connections. So I grew up in an orchard, climbing trees barefoot on it. So having a lot of connections in that way with that space. And went to school in Pittsburgh, but then inevitably moved back here in the northern east coast of Massachusetts. And I'm actually just relocated to very northern eastern Massachusetts. So I'm exploring this new area where I'm at, which is really fun, but connecting to coastal areas, which is like this amazing new kind of I feel really fortunate to be here and be able to explore. I somewhat familiar because I spent a lot of time in New England exploring outside, but to live here is in a coastal area is new. So it's nice to meet you all. Oh, and I popcorn it to Janine. Has she spoken? Okay.
I am not. Thank you, Megan. Greetings from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I have lived here for the past few years and spent before this 2 years in Providence, Rhode Island at RISD. And then before that, I'm originally from New York City, Queens. My parents came from Shanghai in the 80s to escape communism. And we are just like, up until maybe 10 years ago, we were like city people through and through, but I am a woodworker and like wood artist now. My specialty's in wood turning, so I work pretty closely and need to understand trees. And I'm excited to keep pulling together two understandings. I will popcorn to. Has Casey? Have you gone? Is there anyone left? Oh, Manjo.
Yeah. Hello. Thanks, Janine. Hi, my name is Manjot, and I am primarily from Punjab, India, the northern part. And my mother was born in Africa because my parents migrated to Africa for a short period of time for job, while India was like post-independence after British rule ended in India. And on my father's side, my grandfather migrated to the edge of Punjab from northern Pakistan. And then eventually my father got a job in Punjab and I was born in Ludhiana, Punjab. But right now I am speaking from Vancouver, and I am a guest, and I'm a grateful guest on the land of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. I was raised by agricultural fields full of chemicals and pesticides and tons of pollutions, given the fact that Ludhiana is a super industrialized city. And currently I am interested, I'm an artist, and I'm working at the intersection of painting, drawing, video art, and other time-based medias like performance and installation. And And I'm super interested in decolonizing of female body as well as the sovereignty of ecology, and exploring relations between humans and non-humans through speculative fiction, and also looking at iconography of the past to build connections with past to think about the future. Yeah, so that's me. And I will popcorn to Alexandra.
I already went.
I'm sorry, is Elisa still has to go?
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me? My headset sometimes doesn't work. Well, lovely to see you all. I am in Brooklyn, New York, in a very temporary sublet. To situate you more specifically, the woman I'm renting from says that Jason Sudeikis lives across the street. So, but I'm from, my family comes from both ends of Appalachia. My father in the industrial areas around Pittsburgh, and my mother's from the deep fried hillbilly stock of Appalachian Tennessee. And those connections go back as far as can be traced. And I've been thinking a lot lately about how so many of us have been ruptured from our tribal past. And I do environmental work. Much of it has to do with extraction and mining. And in my own, fairly Eurocentric work, I end up blaming the Romans a lot. And I look forward with playing with some of those ideas with you. But like Amy, I'm also trying to transition or evolve my practice into something more interventionist. So I think Matt, we haven't heard from you.
Can you hear me? Cool. I'm Matt. I am currently calling in from Los Angeles, also right by the river. Very grateful to be an artist in residency at Metabolic Studio currently. I was born in Philadelphia, but don't remember much because I moved to the Chicago area when I was around 3 years old. And actually just south of Brookfield, where Mary's from, in like the Hinsdale, Burr Ridge area. I'm very much into sound and its healing capabilities, and sound as energy. And ancestrally, my roots go to Florence, Italy from my dad's side. And then my mom was adopted. So we didn't know much at all about her biological family until 2 years ago, found out that her mother was a Scottish citizen and actually had her out of wedlock, which is why my mom was adopted through the church, because they gave her an ultimatum to either deport her back to Scotland or give up the baby that was out of wedlock. So interesting story there that we learned as a family. And did everyone go? Okay, cool.
Thank you, everybody. What a wonder the infrastructure of satellite communication is, that we can share this moment in time as an act of prayer for a post-human world, that we can use our time collectively just by being together to uplift the potential of thinking about these commons that you've all mentioned, from the commons of the mountains, the commons of the grassland, the commons of the rivers, the commons of the hills, the commons of the cities, and the commons that have united us in thinking that we're being pulled to kind of use art practice to think about how our individual practices can both be individual but connect like mycelial roots, seeking out plant material to build a web that can support life at a time when life itself feels precarious for us human beings, and how that connects to acts of reparation. How can we find solace in this very particular moment by making reparation a part of our practices? So I'm hoping in this class to balance learning and mending. So each week we'll be thinking about what we can learn together in terms of practical knowledge that applies to all of these commons we all live near or feel from. But then starting right away, we'll start to move into practice, and that practice will be focused on ennobling projects that allow us to begin to mend at the same time. I've asked Matt to join us to help facilitate a format for that, so that after the 7 weeks of this class, for those of you who create mending projects that you want to go on, perhaps in your communities, that these homework assignments can be embedded in a social media platform called the Discord. I don't know if any of you have heard about Discord, but we will, after the break, put it in. We've established a Discord for our work in our community called Water Community Power. And within that Discord, we've established something for post-human infrastructure, so that you can start to activate collective engagement that will evolve throughout this class. So Matt's here kind of as my TA on the tech side, because 7 weeks will go very fast, and this might be the beginning of something. I hope it will be. Sorry, we have to always wait for the train to go by, which is a nice sonic element. Mary Rose, before we jump into the reading, would you like to screen share the map that you made about where everybody is from?
Yes, thank you so much. So we used Google Earth, and I shared the link, but maybe someone can give me a thumbs up if they've explored it yet. Okay, awesome, thank you. And I will pull it up here so we can kind of have an overview. I've added most locations from your profiles. And this is a living map, so we'll be able to add also where we're from, where our ancestors are from. And I'm just gonna, for fun, zoom in here to Tongvalan, where I am based, as well as Lauren and the studios in LA, just to get us started.
So this is a really interesting thing to have at our disposal on a Zoom class, is that the satellites are also allowing us to see where we are in novel ways. And it's quite an interesting tool, because we can right away see that that purple dot is in a forest. And that forest is by the sea. And there are certain attributes of that forest that support its well-being. One is the coastal fog.
Any suggestions where to jump?
Should we jump to would anybody like to see where they're from on the map?
There are 3 of us from Providence.
Okay, there you go.
Great, thank you.
What are some observations that people have based on what we're seeing here?
They're also near a body of water.
If you go a little bit south, if you kind of follow that river as it gets wider, you enter a bay, and there's this whole kind of network of rivers leading into this bay, which then leads out to the ocean. So Rhode Island's, I think, the smallest state in the union, but it's got a very long coastline because of all the back and forth of the water and the land.
That's very interesting observation. So that kind of interlock between land and water is probably at a high point there for an urban area.
Yes.
Between my home life and my work life, I circumnavigate the bay often, like go through a series of bridges and then on the land sort of side. So I'm constantly kind of circling the bay, which I love in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
I would also like to add that Pawtucket is close to Providence, neighbor. It's the birth of the American Industrial Revolution, called Slater Mill. Probably appears on, yeah, right there, Pawtucket. Yeah. Yeah, and it was the first water-powered textile mill. Yeah, so it chose the location near the river because it was convenient to dump all the chemicals and debris, whatever it was, down the river. And that's sort of the history of a lot of rivers in Providence and around Providence.
Mary Rose, could you zoom out so we see the whole continent for a sec? Thank you. So between Rhode Island and Los Angeles, between Pawtucket and Topanga, pretty much that entire space 160 years ago was full of grassland and bison. So that the Great Prairies of the North American continent, it's unfathomable right now to think about when we talk about a post-human infrastructure and reparation work, that the satellite image allows you to see the challenge we have at how industrialization and the concept of manifest destiny has radically re-terraformed an entire continent in ways that make it very hard to see and comprehend. But basically from the Rocky Mountains to the Mississippi River, the eradication of the grasslands and the eradication of the bison and the eradication of the First Nations people that lived in harmony for millennium with the grass and the bison has meant industrial ag and water runoff, soil erosion, all moving into the Mississippi River watershed. And then through that into the Gulf of Mexico, where we now have dead zones. And it's very hard to think about that infrastructure, that underneath story, that invisible reality of why you have a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, that the reason for it is that we have re-terraformed the continent and removed the logic of the web of life from being able to activate and catalyze ways to regenerate itself. And so this class is looking at, this idea of working at a scale of destruction. Like how do we act locally and think about how to articulate what our work is a part of, so that we join forces in this idea that we as artists need to create on the same scale that society has the capacity to destroy. And how do we accept and take responsibility for this radical re-terraforming of an entire continent, while at the same time making art that's perhaps hyper local and hyper relevant to the communities that we're engaging with? Can it be both and? And what are the ways that we can do that? So I think with that, it would be wonderful if we took a 5-minute break. And then when we come back, we will screen share Earth Repair, which I think begins to talk about the so what of this. Like, why are we doing Earth Repair and how do we do it? But before we have this short break, we've just already said a lot. Thank you, everybody, for sharing so openly about yourselves and what brings you to this class. And does anybody have any questions about what we just covered in terms of looking at the map? And thank you, Mary Rose, for making that map for us. We thought it would be great to use Google Earth because now you can all, as you're forming your projects, have something that you can embed points on that we can all keep going back to that map as a reference point to what we're doing together and collectively. So again, it's using the infrastructure of a tool that is really pretty new in terms of the history of art practice and collective art practice. So we like the idea that it was so available to us. So it's 5 to 5 here, 5 to 8 on the East Coast. What if we come back in 10 minutes at 5:05 here or 8:05 there? Is that good? To start our reading, and we'll do the reading the same way that we have done the introductions. I'm comfortable with the spaces in between, so Millie's going to start out reading, and then when she feels like stopping, she's going to stop, and one of you just pick up where she leaves off, so we all get a chance to hear each other's voices in this book. Does that sound good? All right. So I will see everybody at 5:05 or 8:05. Welcome back. So before we jump into earth repair, I again wanted to introduce Milli Macen-Moore, who I've been fortunate to have sharing the journey of Metabolic Studio and Farm Lab in particular over the last decade. And more and more, we realize how many incredible voices there are writing about these things, and how inspiring it can be to collectively read together about some of that. So each week, as I mentioned, you'll meet one of the 7 of us on the Farm Lab team. And if anybody wants more of this book, this Metabolic Studio actually has since the beginning of COVID, offered a learning and mending Zoom weekly, where we invite people to do embroidery. This is an original embroidery by one of the artists you'll meet, Mish. So if anybody wants to embroider while you listen to each other read, if you put your, if you private message Mary Rose during the reading, we'll send you an embroidery kit so that you can embroider while you listen and mend. Sometimes when I use my hands, I listen better. This beautiful drawing by Mish is what will be. And if you want to continue reading, this will be happening on Tuesdays, starting this week from LA 5:30 for 7 weeks. So what we're doing with you, we're going to be doing with the general public, a similar thing that Farm Lab has organized. So you're all welcome to go through these readings again if you want to hear more or talk more about it. The guiding questions while we're reading for this that we'll talk a little bit about afterwards are: how can we work towards post-human infrastructure and earth repair outside of the same governmental institutions that uphold colonial sentiments? And how can we avoid the perpetuation of colonial tendencies in our struggle to repair Earth? So with those guiding questions in mind, Mary Rose, would you mind sharing the reading? Can we make it any bigger, you think? Perfect. Can everyone see that, or would you want it bigger? I think I can see that, so you guys probably can.
It's also linked under lesson or week 1. So if you want to click the link to have your own personal viewing, if this is not big enough, feel free. Thank you.
So before we begin, I just wanted to give you guys a quick little intro about what we're about to read. So this week of post-human infrastructure, we will explore grassroots bioremediation methods and address the intersection of decolonization, environmental justice, and healing the earth. We also focus on the tools that renew and regenerate damaged landscapes, including phytoremediation. And for those of you that don't know the word phytoremediation, it's us healing the land with beautiful plants. We're also going to touch a little bit on microremediation, which has to do with mushrooms and how they also heal the land, and microbial remediation. I have a picture, a microscopic picture of what these beautiful microbes look like underneath the microscope. Finally, we'll also explore the obstacles community members and gardeners undertake when they approach bioremediation. So without further ado, I'm going to read from the book itself. This is what it looks like. So introduction, manifesto. Let the beauty we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. Rumi. From the contaminated soil in backyards, community gardens, and vacant urban lots to brownfields, big oil spills, and nuclear accidents, how can we transform toxic and damaged landscapes into thriving, nourishing, and fertile places once more? How can we respond to environmental disasters in radical, accessible, and community empowering ways? Earth Repair is a grassroots toolkit. It explores some of the visionary and practical tools for healing and regenerating damaged ecosystems, and the powerful importance of reclaiming resilience and hope in our communities. It is an introduction to the dynamic and evolving fields of earth repair and grassroots bioremediation. The ideas explored in this book seek to empower and support the work many of us do every day to grow healthy food and medicine amidst the polluted and damaged soils of our backyard gardens, community commons, and wildlands. Earth Repair also seeks to support the efforts of emergency first responders, community members, and grassroots bioremediators on the front line of oil spills and other industrial accidents whose toxic legacies lay siege to our health and the health of the lands that sustain us. There's so much potential for this work, if done right, to jump the gap from novel ideas and to transform into life-transforming community practices, to move past the narrow conversation and sustainability into the powerful territories of regeneration and resurgence, to speak to people's fears and transform despair into hope, apathy into action, to ensure no community is reduced to drinking bottled water because their rivers and groundwater have been poisoned, and that no living being has to suffer tragic health impacts because their air, soil, and food have been contaminated. This is the spirit behind this book on Earth Repair. It permeates everything from the simplicity of building compost or planting sunflowers to bind and break down contamination, to the more difficult work of responding to environmental catastrophe and engaging in the fierce resistance work it takes to change the rules of the game so that such catastrophes never happen in the first place. Many of us yet to see the work of grassroots bioremediation done in our communities. Maybe we've heard stories or been to a workshop where we've learned that mushrooms can clean up oil spills and plants can suck up heavy metals. But when faced with wounded and contaminated spaces or environmental disasters, we often have no idea how to translate the myths and the legends of regenerative solutions into living realities. The stories, ideas, recipes, and tools shared in Earth Repair are powerful offerings from the many community responders, permaculture healers, grassroots bioremediators, and environmental restoration workers who are attending to this post-disaster landscapes. By reconnecting with living beings, living cycles, and living earth, they are bringing life back to city lots, backyards, and our damaged wild spaces and parks. The information and stories presented in Earth Repair are just a small taste of the vast field of fertile knowledge waiting to be explored and engaged. May it inspire you to initiate and support all those great projects, big and small, that will repair, reconnect, revitalize, regenerate, and rewild the many broken and poisoned landscapes in which we live.
I can read a little bit. This is how it's supposed to work.
Yeah, I was just suggesting that we take it in turns to read with no particular order. Just read as long as you want and then stop and someone will jump in. And
Sure.
Don't be afraid of pauses, everybody. It's sometimes good to take on board what we've been hearing.
Okay. Chapter 1, Roots of Repair, Decolonization and Environmental Justice. Before launching into the wild world of earth repair and grassroots bioremediation, I would like to take a moment to address the intersection of decolonization, environmental justice, and earth repair. As many of us are seeking to heal the lands we call home, we must recognize that these lands were stolen from indigenous peoples and devastated through acts of decolonization. If you're not indigenous to these lands, then you are participating in and benefiting from an ongoing crime against the people of these original nations. Though we cannot choose where we are positioned at birth, how we relate to that positioning is absolutely critical in addressing and challenging historical and current injustices. We have a lot of work to do in taking responsibility for these injustices and ensuring they do not continue. We must find honorable and meaningful ways to move forward that repair our relationships with each other and the land. As the author of Earth Repair, I feel that it is critical to acknowledge this reality and to ask that you keep it in mind as you carry the information within this book, out into the lands beneath your feet. Okay, I'll read one more paragraph. These lands not only bear the wounds of an industrial war waged upon their forests, rivers, meadows, and mountains, but also the deep, painful history and ongoing practice of colonization with its continued disrespect, violence, occupation, and environmental destruction forced upon indigenous peoples. The indigenous peoples who traditionally tended these lands and the many who continue to do so never willingly gave up their lands. They have been forced from them so that ports, forts, malls, housing developments, roads, farms, public gardens, golf courses, car dealerships, schools, office towers, mines, dams, and pipelines could erase and bury the vibrant life support systems and strong communities that existed here previously.
One of the ways that colonialism seeps into the everyday work of earth repair is through the dark legacy and enduring tradition of environmental racism. Indigenous communities, people of color in low-income neighborhoods are all too often sites targeted for heavy industry, military bases, waste dumps, and higher levels of pollution. People in these communities suffer more health and environmental impacts than their affluent, predominantly white neighbors. Whatever laws, agreements, and regulations that may be present to challenge such injustices are often ignored and violated by corporations and governments. When it comes to recovering from environmental disasters and industrial accidents, these communities often receive little notification, support, or effective cleanup, if any at all. This reality also applies to poorer countries, which have been traditionally used as a dumping ground and which rich environments have been exploited and destroyed by wealthier countries and their corporations. What does this look like on the ground? Massive tar sands mines that are poisoning the world's third largest watershed and the traditional territories and communities of the Cree and Dene peoples. Health impacts suffered by the Amjiwinang First Nation community, which is surrounded by the many refineries of the Chemical Valley in Sarnia, home to Canada's largest cluster of chemical, allied manufacturing and research and development facilities. Low income and or racialized urban neighborhoods whose homes, schools, and gardens sit atop contaminated soils or in the midst of heavy industry. The list goes on. Though some folks like myself can simply relocate to cleaner and healthier living spaces, many people cannot, due to economic circumstances as well as community, cultural, and historical connections and responsibilities that hold them to these very places. In these realities, environmental destruction, tragic health impacts, oppression, and social justice all collide, which is why some folks do the work of earth repair for the love of the planet, some for the love of their loved ones and community, and many for both. The practice of earth repair not only involves detoxifying and revitalizing the land by working with plants, mushrooms, and microorganisms, it must also include the powerful work of decolonization that seeks to deeply repair and enliven both the ecosystem and the communities that support thriving natural systems. So as you consider initiating and engaging in earth repair and grassroots bioremediation work, acknowledge, respect, and honor the original stewards of these lands and their indigenous rights, life practices, knowledge, resistance, and sovereignty. Ask permission for the earthwork you are about to do. Find out who your ancestors are, where your people come from, the ways they cared for and honored their ancestral lands, and at what point this relationship was lost or destroyed. Try to see the land around you with new eyes, the kind that can see beyond the grid systems, mega projects, dams, fields of monocultures, and urban jungles. Take the initiative and responsibility for educating yourself on the buried and hidden stories of lands you call home and the peoples you share with them. Acknowledge and actively work to challenge the power imbalances and destructive ideologies that have created situations whereby the ability for many different peoples and communities to be healthy, have right livelihoods, and live in positive relationship to Earth have been severely compromised. Challenge the capitalist culture that sees the earth and its living beings as something to be owned, commodified, and destroyed for profit. And do not replicate it in the earthwork that you do. Finally, ask yourself how you will meaningfully undertake the deep and life-altering work of decolonization and the powerful solidarity and resistance work which it requires. We must challenge the voracious colonial processes that created and continue to create such damage in the first place, because without that, your healing work for this planet will only be superficial and short-lived at best.
Earth Repair and Grassroots Bioremediation, Chapter 2. Most of the earth repair will focus on grassroots bioremediation, but it's important to remember that bioremediation is part of a much larger practice of earth repair, earth care, and right relation. There are many other tools and practices that fall under the broad and deep scope of earth repair. In this book, we are just scratching the surface, focusing on few tools for cleaning up contamination, tools that also renew and regenerate, damaged landscapes. Bioremediation works with living systems to detoxify contaminated environments. It includes microbial remediation, engaging the healing power of microorganisms like bacteria and fungi. Phytoremediation, engaging the healing power of plants, and mycoremediation, engaging the healing power of mushrooms to heal contaminated and damaged lands and waters. To me, true grassroots bioremediation and earth repair aspire to the following: community accessibility and affordability, working with nature to assist in its healing, DIY, that's do-it-yourself remediation, restoration and regeneration, techniques that are high impact, low input, non-toxic, simple and easy to replicate, prioritizing deep ecological healing and community justice as the motivating force, embedding the skills and necessary infrastructure in our communities, especially communities most at risk for environmental disasters and contamination issues, applying whole systems, multi-kingdom, multi-species, multi-tool approaches, honoring local knowledge, local resources, and engaging local decision-making, empowering people to directly respond to their circumstances and crises in ways that increase their knowledge and self-determination and result in real improvement for the planet and their communities. Avoiding externalizing the problem whenever possible, challenging and actively resisting the privatization and corporate ownership of solutions, spaces, and living beings, engaging in the powerful preventative medicine of resistance through grassroots organizing and mobilizing to stop destructive projects from going ahead, acknowledging that it takes a community to make an earth repair project successful, and seeking to build and maintain respectful relationships and trust with our mainly living earth repair allies, that is bacteria, plants, fungi, animals, people, ecosystem.
Grassroots bioremediation and earth repair mean choosing our interventions wisely, observing nature, learning and drawing inspiration from its brilliant design. They involve figuring out how to restore cycles and natural processes that have been interrupted, and working with nature's own healing mechanisms to organically and holistically restore wellness to a site. This work is not about being dogmatically attached to a specific tool or method. The true grassroots bioremediator is not someone who believes that mushrooms will save the world and wants to apply them to every situation. Instead, such a healer is willing to consider that we have many tools at our disposal, that a lot of these tools work best in concert or in succession, and that the environmental conditions of the sites we are working with may favor one tool over another. There is no one-size-fits-all approach. This way of doing earth repair does not make much profit for industry. Its implementation pays off over time. Earth repair also doesn't cover up and hide the problem quickly enough to save public relations face or to get a speedy stamp of approval so that the problem is all wrapped up and companies can move on. Unlike most conventional remediation that treats the symptoms, patents the cures, and profits from the lack of ecological health, earth repair methods seek the roots of the illness and act in ways that restore overall health and balance to these natural systems. These methods require frequent and lighter interventions over a longer period of time. These tools for repair and regeneration are not tools fashioned from the same industrial paradigm that created the problem in the first place. Unlike the chemicals and heavy machinery used in conventional remediation, you are working with living beings to restore life and health to other living beings. This is complex work that can be hard to control and hard to command with the quickness often required for disaster response. These different microbes, plants, and mushrooms grow differently in different soils, microclimates, and in the presence of different contaminants. Therefore, applications need to be tailored to specific site characteristics and conditions, making it challenging to have a ready-to-go stock on hand. Some of these living beings are more sensitive than others, and you will have to coax and care for them in order to get them to the point where their healing powers are unleashed. In a way, you may have to become bacteria, plant, and mushroom whisperers, and those of us who combine that care with a skillful and detail-oriented approach will be the most successful at this work.
Grassroots bioremediation reality check. When I set out to write Earth Repair, I wanted to compile a how-to guide of empowering, accessible, and holistic tools to help clean up the mess that's been made of this beautiful place we call home. The reality may be that we just aren't there yet. These tools are still being developed and honed. Many of them are facing resistance and inertia from governments, industry, and some professionals, which is further delaying their growth and the ability to succeed. In order to be effective at this work, it is important to know what are some of the barriers you may face in doing grassroots bioremediation. Conventional remediation. Conventional remediation refers to the many ways that industry and government are approaching the removal of harmful chemicals and metals from contaminated sites, specifically looking at how they repair or clean up contaminated soil and water. Though I have some criticisms of how conventional remediation is done, it is important to recognize that there are situations where it can achieve strong results. Some that may not be achievable by grassroots bioremediation due to the extent and extreme nature of the destruction caused by the industrial system. Both conventional and grassroots remediation have their blind spots. Some grassroots remediators can be blissfully overconfident about the healing power of nature without understanding the nature of contamination on a site. Some conventional remediation professionals can possess an overconfidence in using technology, chemistry, and engineering-based solutions that do not work with the innate ecological intelligence of the land or the people who reside most closely to it. They can fail horribly at restoring the ecological integrity of a site. With the almighty dollar, public relations and government regulations as primary drivers in most cases, solutions and treatments are often selected based on their cheapness and expediency, leading to more of an excavate, cover, and bury approach to cleanup. That said, it is important to build relationships with key allies in this line of work. Most folks working in conventional remediation are in it to do good work and are equally unsatisfied with the outcomes and compromises that they are forced to make by the corporations who call the shots. They have a lot of experience working with extensively damaged land, and they have a lot of experience, extensively damaged land and big projects. And this important knowledge and skills could be helpful to increasing the effectiveness of grassroots bioremediation efforts. In Appendix 2, you will find descriptions of different conventional remediation technologies. I highly recommend you familiarize yourself with them. As a grassroots bioremediator, or as anyone living in a community dealing with contamination, it is important to know what technologies and tools are currently being applied to cleaning up contaminated sites and what their impacts truly are.
Barriers to community-based bioremediation. The urban gardener is in regular physical contact with the soil, breathing its dust and eating foods grown from it. Few others have such an intimate relationship with city soils, a resource that is seen by most others as something that only serves as a foundation for buildings and roads. Logically then, gardeners are concerned with soil contamination issues and are looking for simple and low-cost means to address them. For a number of years now, urban gardeners and their supporting organizations have been aware of the concept of bioremediation. Bioremediation's use of naturally occurring organisms, apparent affordability, and minimal disturbance to soils all add to its attractiveness. The idea of partnering with life forms such as bacteria, plants, worms, and fungi, all of whom gardeners are already familiar with, greatly add to its appeal. Numerous scientific studies have been conducted that support bioremediation's effectiveness. There's no question that given the right circumstances, these organisms have the potential to degrade, immobilize, or sequester a variety of contaminants. Bioremediation would appear to be an ideal and elegant solution to issues of soil toxicity. Why then have bioremediation techniques not yet been put into use broadly as a means to remediate contaminated soil in urban areas, urban gardens? Why are we not seeing citizen groups applying the tools of bioremediation and publishing their results? These are questions that I've been asking for a number of years in my work designing ecologically and socially regenerative systems and urban environments. In 2004, the Rhizome Collective, an organization that I co-founded in Austin, Texas, received a $200,000 grant from the US Environmental Protection Agency to clean up a brownfield site located in the city. This cleanup primarily involved removal of tons of trash and debris, a twisted mountain of concrete, rebar, wood scraps, tires, and carpet scraps from a former illegal dumping site. Although levels of organic and heavy metal pollutants on the site met residential standards, concerns remained about the safety of the gardening there post-cleanup. Unfortunately, funding in the grant would not cover the cost of soil remediation. Shortly afterwards, I was part of an effort to establish a community-based bioremediation plan in post-Katrina New Orleans to help address residual hydrocarbon contamination left behind from the storm. Compost teas were applied to areas known to be affected by pollutants. While the program received donations of services from soil testing labs, the funds were insufficient to carry out a properly managed remediation program on a scale that was necessary. The barriers to community-based bioremediation are many. One such obstacle is that there's still a great deal of mystique, particularly to the less scientifically literate, surrounding bioremediation and its processes. This lack of understanding can make bioremediation an intimidating prospect to many. The vast majority of literature concerning bioremediation exists in scientific journals, written in a dry academic style that's close to unreadable by the layperson. The bulk of these studies are conducted in highly controlled, sterile laboratory conditions, incredibly different from the diverse, heterogeneous, and competitive ecologies that exist in a garden environment. In order for this boundary to be spanned, a few individuals that are scientifically literate will need to wade through all the journals and distill a series of guiding principles and best practices usable by the average gardener. From there, a push needs to be made from within and outside academic institutions to conduct a greater number of field-based trials where proven bioremediation techniques are put to the test in real-world conditions. Emphasis needs to be placed on techniques that are simple, affordable, and that make use of commonly available biological agents. The focus of these studies should be on the top 12 inches of soil, the zone in which the majority of urban gardeners are active. Partnerships between citizen groups and academic institutions are vital, as universities have access to technological resources that gardeners are commonly lacking, but are necessary to conduct such trials.
So cost is another significant barrier to implementing bioremediation techniques. While bioremediation is relatively inexpensive, especially when compared to more intensive means of conventional remediation, its use still requires some expenses, particularly when soil testing is involved. For example, spreading spent mushroom substrate over an oil spill could conceivably be done for little to no cost. Testing the contaminated soil, however, to be sure that the total petroleum hydrocarbons have been reduced to safe levels can be prohibitively expensive, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. While the spent substrate application may have been successful in degrading the oil, without verifiable data to prove its effectiveness, it is difficult to get the support needed to replicate the process on a broad scale. Governmental agencies ideally would play a role in funding citizen-based cleanups, although they do have very little to date. Although they have done very little to date. Most of the government funds that exist for brownfield remediation go to large-scale developers who are primarily interested in meeting regulatory obligations as quickly as possible. These developers typically favor a dig and dump approach to soil remediation rather than dealing with the longer time scale and other uncertainties that can accompany bioremediation. Additionally, many governmental agencies charged with environmental protection are reluctant to work with citizen groups, fearing liability or something to go wrong. Consequently, government agencies are commonly unfamiliar with small-scale bioremediation. It is my belief that it is very much in the interest of government agencies to alter this policy. As interest in community gardening increases, so will the number of people wanting to partake in soil remediation. These people are going to attempt remediation, whether or not they receive assistance from agencies. Therefore, it makes sense for agencies to offer some form of guidance or assistance so that people do not put themselves in harm's way. Part of this work would be developing a solid method of risk analysis for exposure to soil toxins. Currently, no such framework exists. It is important to be able to answer important questions like, what is the danger of being exposed to a particular contaminant in the soil? And further, what is the danger that being taken up into a plant and being passed into the body? These aspects of risk need to be weighed against all the benefits of gardening, such as improved nutrition, physical exercise, and enhanced community relationships. Developing such a framework is a multidisciplinary task involving the fields of ecology, toxicology, public health, and medicine. Developing a protocol for qualitative soil analysis is another innovation that could reduce the cost of bioremediation. It may be possible to create a method for assessing the quality of soils using what are called bioassays. An example of a bioassay would be testing seed germination. Page, please. Yeah. Seed germination rates in soils with known levels of toxicity. Using this information, it could be possible to determine contaminant levels in soils using only plant seeds, potentially cutting the cost of soil testing dramatically. Bioremediation holds great promise for urban gardeners as a tool for achieving improved soil health. Hopefully in time and with the cooperation of institutional entities, it can go from being an experimental technique to a broadly utilized strategy.
That actually concludes our reading. Thank you everyone for participating. It's always great to hear others read. Before we go into our breakout rooms, as Lauren had mentioned, we do have a couple of guiding questions. And an additional guiding question I wanted to pose to everybody is, any of you have any earth repair experiences? Whether you did it personally, or if you have friends and family that have done it, or simply if you've seen sunflowers growing in an abandoned lot that you probably know that it used to be a gas station or a train yard or a tow yard. So I'm just going to give you guys an example of my interaction with grassroots bioremediation. So in 2015, the Metabolic Studio acquired a property that had been a tow yard for many, many years. If you can imagine all these cars dumping this petroleum and contaminants into the asphalt, but know that the asphalt is porous and all those contaminants actually percolate through the asphalt, through the base, and into the soil. So when we acquired that property, one of the first actions that Lauren had done was to remove 6 60-foot circles as test plots or a field case experiment. The next step that we did is we just basically observed the land. We allowed the land to breathe, to receive air, to receive light, to receive the natural rain. And as soon as the rains came, all this germination started happening of these seeds that we couldn't believe were actually alive. They had been covered, we don't know, maybe 75 years or more. And so what we started doing is indexing and taking data as to what specific species were growing in this contaminated soil. The next step that we did was to take soil samples for us to have a baseline as to what contaminants existed beneath that asphalt. Then we started working with other scientists and permaculturists, and we started researching, how do we heal this land? How do we leave it better than we found it? And everyone that was approaching us were recommending very different types of remediation processes. Some were offering conventional remediation processes. Others were actually recommending very low-tech bioremediation processes, very similar to what Leela Darwish had just described in her book. Lauren has always been very attracted to supporting the living systems and the life web. She's always thought about post-human infrastructure for all these years. So of course, we were all attracted by this low-tech bioremediation methods. So if you can imagine, all these little sprouts started growing, and we began to question, wow, how are these plants actually growing in this contamination, right? But what we did notice is that there were specific species, very similar to this. Smells amazing. They were actually volunteering to grow in this contaminated soil. Once we started researching the specific species that were growing in the soil, we actually learned that these specific plants actually uptake and bind lead, mercury, arsenic, cadmium, all the contaminants that were on the land. We later started experimenting with mushrooms. We wanted to learn more. Oh, I just noticed all this light. So sorry. Let me turn my.
It's quite beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Well, we can't see the mushrooms. It might as well be a piece of pizza.
There you go. So we started working and researching what mycelium was actually helping us heal the earth. This specific mushroom is called oyster mushroom, and it's well studied and scientifically proven to actually heal the earth. We were then later more interested in the invisible microorganisms and fungi and mycelium that we actually couldn't see. So then we started researching that, and we started isolating what specific bacteria was helping us heal the earth. Having that said, in 2020, we tested the soil again, and guess what? We were able to reduce the lead content by 70% with plants, mycelium, and the bacteria that was already in the land. Now we're moving those practices to the other side of the LA River. We have another property there that historically was Standard Oil, which is now Chevron. And unfortunately, they contaminated the soil there as well. So Lauren said, hey guys, let's apply everything that we've learned on that other site onto this site. As I had mentioned, Farm Lab is a multidisciplinary, multi-generational group of people that Lauren leads and directs us. And for her to give us the opportunity to heal the land where the soil was much more contaminated was extremely exciting for all of us. And so just to give you guys a little bit of a list of all the methods that we use, when we first interacted with the land, we first added biochar, then we added smoke, liquid smoke. We didn't till the land because we understood that the land was contaminated and harmful for those of us that are working on it. We then added compost on a monthly basis, compost tea. And we are at the 6-month period. We also initiated by planting corn, a very well-known plant that actually extracts and binds lead. And so tomorrow, that corn that's been growing, we started at spring equinox, and now we're going to harvest it in fall equinox, which is tomorrow. We will then test the soil again, and we will see that if those methods have continued to help us heal the earth. Also know that all of these methods have always been methods that we want for community in our surrounding areas, which are predominantly underserved communities, to be replicable. So we're using low-tech methods that don't cost very much. The cost pretty much is you finding community members that are soil scientists, mycologists, even policy makers, people like myself that love plants and are, as the book had said, plant whisperers, mushroom whisperers, policy whisperers, artists. You want to invite everybody from your community to participate, because no matter how much knowledge they have regarding bioremediation, everyone in your community will contribute something. So going back to the question, do you have an example of how you have interacted in repairing the earth or healing the earth?
Wonderful, Millie. What I will also add is there are no mistakes in earth repair. Pretty much anything that you do once you unseal, unpave, allows light to access soil again, the earth will repair herself. And you become a facilitator of your observations, which is why I think artists are so good at earth repair, is that we're used to that energetic exchange between our materials, our intuition, and our practice. So I'm going to assign some breakout rooms for a short 5 to 10 minute session so that you can all discuss with each other your own earth repair experiences, as well as these guiding questions that we've asked about that may not be practical earth repair, but are conceptual or psychic earth repair in the reparation we make by being conscious of the world we live in, needing repair through concepts like, many of us living in the continent of North America are living on stolen land. And as you could tell from our introductions, we're already, many of us, repairing that in how we introduce ourselves. All right, well, here we go into the breakout rooms. Enjoy the ride. And thank you, Millie, for the wonderful reading and the wonderful sharing. Oops. Wait, I think I want, let's see. Breakout rooms. And